I thought today I would talk a little bit about, why we recommend that you have at least 3 unrelated industries in a town where you're going to invest. And I bring this up because a client recently sent me something that they were thinking of buying, and I looked at the town that they wanted to invest in, and basically it was what I call a one-trick pony kind of town. There was just one very large business supporting this town, and that's really a red flag, because if that business goes out of business and a business does not replace it, you can have a disastrous effect on the town. But also, if you've invested, those people who mainly have jobs there or jobs that support the people that work at this, I forget what the company was, but in this industry, I think it had to do with corn. It was like corn processing. So if you lose that employer, you lose also all the jobs that were supporting them, like the drive-through and the laundromat, the grocery store. I mean, everybody gets affected by this. So I kind of want to first take you back to the heyday of manufacturing. And I use this because my father grew up in a town called Claremont, New Hampshire. And they basically had 2 or 3 types of big companies, but they were all manufacturing. So things like tire manufacturing and toys. So in this Claremont, New Hampshire, which I'm sure you haven't heard of, Goodyear Tire was a huge employer, and then Joy Toys was a huge employer, and I couldn't remember the third one, but there were basically 3 huge employers. So people got paid well, and it was always busy through the war. A lot of women went into the factories in World War II. So after the World War was done, some of them lost their jobs, because men came back and got those jobs. But these towns, just like Pittsburgh back in the day, Detroit had basically car manufacturers, and Detroit was severely hurt in the downturn, the economic downturn, but also because their industry was mainly automotive. And at that time, that was when hybrid cars were coming out, and they hadn't caught up with that. So the big 3 that were like giant employers 50 years ago, 40 years ago, were hurt. So these towns are examples of why you don't want to go into a town that has one type of business. So even though tires and toys are pretty different, they were manufacturing plants to produce these things. So it might be different if you had the main corporate office of, say, Mattel, and tires would be, and maybe a manufacturing plant for the cars. So you just want to look at what is the true business behind these businesses, right? Because what happens is when those companies go, the town implodes and the jobs end. And by the thousands, it's not like little stuff, it's huge amounts of jobs that are lost, which then affects you. So the more recent example that comes to mind is about 5 years ago, the price of oil was really, really high. And I was getting calls from people who wanted to invest in North Dakota. And I thought, why are you going to North Dakota? And I realized, the oil industry is booming. They were talking about putting a pipeline through there from Canada right down through there, right? So, and this happened on the Canadian side too, Calgary, Alberta, Edmonton, all those middle of the country areas, the cowboy country, right? That's the oil industry that supports it. Same thing in Houston. Houston also had a huge economic downturn in the late 80s when the price of oil changes, and that's your main business in a town. It's terrible. So just for kicks, I do remember that my client said, I can get $2,300 for each side of this duplex in, I think it was Williston, North Dakota, which is a big oil area. And so I looked it up and I was like, well, okay, yeah, but what else is there? There was nothing else there. All the industries were supporting the oil industry. And so I just looked it up for kicks today, and that same rent for mobile home or duplex, right around $1,200. The prices are still high. I was a little bit shocked to see $1,450 for a 2-bedroom apartment. But it's nothing like it was. Now, those rents may come back up, but then you as an investor, you're seeing your rents go down and go back up. And imagine if you're trying to do your numbers on $2,300 per side, so $4,600, and that income goes down to $2,400, you could be pretty negative on your cash flow. So we always recommend that you do go invest in a place that has, unless you're speculating. Speculating is a different thing. Like you're going to buy at the bottom of the market and then wait for oil prices to come up, for example, and then you're going to sell when oil prices are high because you know that duplex is worth everything that it's going to be worth because the cash flow is as high as it's going to be. If you're going to do that, that's speculating. That's not investing, but more power to you if you have the guts to do that. So, so just make sure that you have 3 employers that are unrelated, preferably that are cycle resistant, economic cycle resistant. So, you know, government, education, hospitals, medical, even research centers, anything related to things that have nothing to do with the economy is going to be your most solid employer. But make sure if it's going to be private sector that they're at least totally unrelated industries, so that you have, if one industry is down, you still have other employment that's possible for your tenants to pay you your rent, which of course is the bottom line. So that's our lesson for today, why we want to make sure we have more than 3 industries in an area before we invest.